I tried to get a little bit of color at lunch. So it is an after dinner stream today. It is Wednesday. Yeah, we are reading the Grimm's fairy tales. I hit record before I checked how I looked at all. So this is what I look like for today's stream. That's fine. Okay, let's get a few of these out of the way and then I'm going to go eat a burger. Yeah, we are starting with the Gallant Trader. No, we're not. We're starting with the Gallant Tailor. I've had a glass of wine. I've worked a full day. Let's see how this goes. If it's not good, I won't upload it to YouTube. One summer morning, a little tailor was sitting on his board near the window and working cheerfully with all his might when an old woman came down the street crying, "Good jam to sell, good jam to sell." The cry sounded pleasant in the little tailor's ears, so he put his head out of the window and called out, "Here, my good woman, come here if you want a customer." So the poor woman climbed the steps with her heavy basket and was obliged to unpack and display all her pots to the tailor. He looked at every one of them and, lifting all the lids, applied his nose to each and said at last, "The jam seems pretty good. You may weigh me out 4 half-ounces, or I don't mind having 1/4 of a pound." The woman, who had expected to find a good customer, gave him what he asked for, but went off angry and grumbling. "This jam is the very thing for me," cried the little tailor. "It will give me strength and cunning." And he took down the bread from the cupboard, cut a whole round off the loaf, spread the jam on it, laid it near him, and went on stitching more gallantly than ever. All the while, the scent of the sweet jam was spreading throughout the room, where there were quantities of flies who were attracted by it and flew to partake. "Now then, who asked you to come?" said the tailor, and drove the unbidden guests away. But the flies, not understanding his language, were not to be got rid of like that, and returned in larger numbers than before. Then the tailor, not being able to stand it any longer, took from his chimney corner a ragged cloth, and saying, "Now I'll let you have it," beat it among them unmercifully. When he ceased and counted the slain, he found 7 lying dead before him. "This is indeed somewhat," he said, wondering at his own gallantry. "The whole town shall know this." So he hastened to cut out a belt, and he stitched it and put on it in large capitals, 7 at one blow. That's a tough sentence. "The town, did I say?" said the little tailor. "The whole world shall know it." And his heart quivered with joy like a lamb's tail. The tailor fastened the belt round him and began to think of going out into the world, for his workshop seemed too small for his worship. So he looked about in all the house for something that it would be useful to take with him, but he found nothing but an old cheese, which he put in his pocket. Outside the door he noticed that a bird had got caught in the bushes, so he took that and put it in his pocket with the cheese. Then he set out gallantly on his way, and as he was light and active, he felt no fatigue. The way led over a mountain, and when he reached the topmost peak, he saw a terrible giant sitting there, and looking about him at his ease. The tailor went bravely up to him, called out to him, and said, "Comrade, good day. There you sit, looking over the wide world. I am on the way thither to seek my fortune. Have you a fancy to go with me?" The giant looked at the tailor contemptuously and said, "You little rascal, you miserable fellow." "That may be," answered the little tailor, and undoing his coat, he showed the giant his belt. "You can read there whether I am a man or not." The giant read, 7 at one blow, and thinking it meant men that the tailor had killed, felt at once more respect for the little fellow. But as he wanted to prove him, he took up a stone and squeezed it so hard that water came out of it. "Now you can do that," said the giant. "That is, if you have the strength for it." "That's not much," said the little tailor. "I call that play." And he put his hand in his pocket and took out the cheese and squeezed it so that the whey ran out of it. "Well," said he, "what do you think of that?" The giant did not know what to say to it, for he could not have believed it of so little a man. Then the giant took up a stone and threw it so high that it was nearly out of sight. "Now, little fellow, suppose you do that." "Well thrown," said the tailor, "but the stone fell back to earth again. I will throw you one that will never come back." So he felt in his pocket, took out the bird, and threw it into the air. And the bird, when it found itself at liberty, took wing, flew off, and returned no more. "What do you think of that, comrade?" asked the tailor. "There is no doubt that you can throw," said the giant, "but we will see if you can carry." He led the little tailor to a mighty oak tree which had been felled and was lying on the ground, and said, "Now if you are strong enough, help me carry this tree out of the wood." "Willingly," said the little man. "You take the trunk on your shoulders. I will take the branches with all their foliage. That is much more difficult." So the giant took the trunk on his shoulders, and the tailor seated himself on a branch, and the giant, who could not see what he was doing, had the whole tree to carry, and the little man on it as well. And the little man was very cheerful and merry, and whistled the tune, "There were 3 tailors riding by," as if carrying the tree were mere child's play. The giant, when he had struggled on under his heavy load a part of the way, was tired out and cried, "Look here, I must let go of the tree." The tailor jumped off quickly and, taking hold of the tree with both arms, as if he were carrying it, said to the giant, "You see you can't carry the tree, though you are such a big fellow." They went on together a little further, and presently they came to a cherry tree, and the giant took hold of the topmost branches where the ripest fruit hung, and pulling them downwards, gave them to the tailor to hold, bidding him eat. But the little tailor was much too weak to hold the tree, and as the giant let go, the tree sprang back, and the tailor was caught up in the air. And when he dropped down again without any damage, the giant said to him, "How is that? Haven't you strength enough to hold such a weak sprig as that?" "It is not strength that is lacking," answered the little tailor. "How should it to one who has slain at 7 a blow? I jumped over the tree because the hunters are shooting down there in the bushes. You jump it too if you can." The giant made the attempt, and not being able to vault the tree, he remained hanging in the branches, so that once more the little tailor got the better of him. Then said the giant, "As you are such a gallant fellow, suppose you come with me to our den and stay the night." The tailor was quite willing, and he followed him. When they reached the den, there sat some other giants by the fire, and each had a roasted sheep in his hand and was eating it. The little tailor looked round and thought, "There is more elbow room here than in my workshop." And the giant showed him a bed and told him that he had better lie down upon it and go to sleep. The bed was, however, too big for the tailor, so he did not stay in it, but crept into a corner to sleep. As soon as it was midnight, the giant got up, took a great staff of iron, and beat the bed through with one stroke, and supposed he had made an end of that grasshopper of a tailor. Very early in the morning, the giants went into the wood and forgot all about the little tailor, and when they saw him coming after them alive and merry, they were terribly frightened, and thinking he was going to kill them, they ran away in all haste. So the little tailor marched on, always following his nose. And after he had gone a great way, he entered the courtyard belonging to a king's palace, and there he felt so overpowered with fatigue that he lay down and fell asleep. In the meanwhile came various people who looked at him very curiously and read on his belt, 7 at one blow. "Oh," said they, "why should this great lord come in here in time of peace? What a mighty champion he must be." Then they went and told the king about him, and they thought that if war should break out, what a worthy and useful man he would be, and that he ought not to be allowed to depart at any price. The king then summoned his council and sent one of his courtiers to the little tailor to beg him, so soon as he should wake up, to consent to serve in the king's army. So the messenger stood and waited at the sleeper's side until his limbs began to stretch and his eyes to open, and then he carried his answer back. And the answer was, "That was the reason for which I came," said the little tailor. "I am ready to enter the king's service." So he was received into it very honorably, and a separate dwelling set apart for him. But the rest of the soldiers were very much set against the little tailor, and they wished him 1,000 miles away. "What shall be done about it?" they said amongst themselves. "If we pick a quarrel and fight with him, then 7 of us will fall at each blow. That will be of no good to us." So they came to a resolution and went all together to the king to ask for their discharge. "We never intended," said they, "to serve with a man who kills 7 at a blow." The king felt sorry to lose all his faithful servants because of one man, and he wished that he had never seen him, and would willingly get rid of him if he might. But he did not dare to dismiss the little tailor for fear he should kill all the king's people and place himself upon the throne. He thought a long while about it, and at last made up his mind what to do. He sent for the little tailor and told him that as he was so great a warrior, he had a proposal to make him. He told him that in a wood in his dominions dwelt 2 giants who did great damage by robbery, murder, and fire, and that no man durst go near them for fear of his life. But that if the tailor should overcome and slay both these giants, the king would give him his only daughter in marriage and half his kingdom as dowry, and that 100 horsemen should go with him to give him assistance. "That would be something for a man like me," thought the little tailor. "A beautiful princess and half a kingdom are not to be had every day." And he said to the king, "Oh yes, I can soon overcome the giants, and yet have no need of the 100 horsemen. He who can kill 7 at one blow has no need to be afraid of 2. So the little tailor set out, and the 100 horsemen followed him. When he came to the border of the wood, he said this to his escort: "Stay here while I go to attack the giants." Then he sprang into the wood and looked about him right and left. After a while, he caught sight of the 2 giants. They were lying down under a tree asleep and snoring so that all the branches shook. The little tailor, all alive, filled both his pockets with stones and climbed up into the tree and made his way to an overhanging bough, so that he could seat himself just above the sleepers, and from there he let one stone after another fall on the chest of one of the giants. For a long time the giant was quite unaware of this, but at last he waked and pushed his comrade and said, "What are you hitting me for?" "You are dreaming," said the other. "I am not touching you." And they composed themselves again to sleep, and the tailor let fall a stone on the other giant. "What can that be?" cried he. "What are you casting at me?" I am casting nothing at you, answered the first, grumbling. They disputed about it for a while, but as they were tired, they gave it up at last, and their eyes closed once more. Then the little tailor began his game anew, picked out a heavier stone, and threw it down with force upon the first giant's chest. This is too much, cried he, and sprang up like a madman and struck his companion such a blow that the tree shook above them. The other paid him back with a ready coin, and they fought with such fury that they tore up trees by their roots to use for weapons against each other, so that at last they both of them lay dead upon the ground. And now the little tailor got down. Another piece of luck, said he, that the tree I was sitting in did not get torn up too, or else I should have had to jump like a squirrel from one to another. Then he drew his sword and gave each of the giants a few hacks in the breast, and went back to the horsemen and said, The deed is done. I have made an end of both of them, but it went hard with me. In the struggle they rooted up trees to defend themselves, but it was of no use. They had to deal with a man who can kill 7 at one blow. Then you were not wounded? Asked the horseman. Nothing of the sort, answered the tailor. I have not turned a hair. The horsemen still would not believe it, and rode into the wood to see, and there they found the giants wallowing in their blood, and all about them lying the uprooted trees. The little tailor then claimed the promised boon, but the king repented him of his offer, and he sought again how to rid himself of the hero. Before you can possess my daughter and the half of my kingdom, said he to the tailor, you must perform another heroic act. In the woods lives a unicorn who does great damage. You must secure him. A unicorn does not strike more terror in me than 2 giants. 7 at one blow. That is my way. Was the tailor's answer. So, taking a rope and an axe with him, he went out into the wood and told those who were ordered to attend him to wait outside. He had not far to seek. The unicorn soon came out and sprang at him, as if he would make an end of him without delay. Softly, softly, said he. Make haste, worst speed, and remained standing until the animal came quite near. Then he slipped quietly behind a tree. The unicorn ran with all his might against the tree and stuck his horn so deep into the trunk that he could not get out again, and so was taken. Now I have you, said the tailor, coming up from behind the tree, and, putting the rope round the unicorn's neck, he took the axe, set free the horn, and when all his party were assembled, he led forth the animal and brought it to the king. The king did not yet wish to give him the promised reward, and set him a third task to do. Before the wedding could take place, the tailor was to secure a wild boar which had done a great deal of damage in the wood. The huntsmen were to accompany him. All right, said the tailor, that is child's play. But he did not take the huntsmen into the wood, and they were all the better pleased, for the wild boar had many a time before received them in such a way that they had no fancy to disturb him. When the boar caught sight of the tailor, he ran at him with foaming mouth and gleaming tusks to bear him to the ground, but the nimble hero rushed into a chapel which chanced to be near, and jumped quickly out of a window on the other side. The boar ran at him, and when he got inside, the door shut after him, and there he was imprisoned, for the creature was too big and unwieldy to jump out of the window too. Then the little tailor called the huntsmen that they might see the prisoner with their own eyes, and then he betook himself to the king, who now, whether he liked it or not, was obliged to fulfill his promise, and give him his daughter and the half of his kingdom. But if he had known that the great warrior was only a little tailor, he would have taken it still more to heart. So the wedding was celebrated with great splendor and little joy, and the tailor was made into a king. One night the young queen heard her husband talking in his sleep and saying, Now, boy, make me that waistcoat and patch me those breeches, or I will lay my yard measure about your shoulders. And so, as she perceived what low birth her husband was, she went to her father the next morning and told him all, and begged him to set her free from a man who was nothing better than a tailor. The king bade her be comforted, saying, Tonight leave your bedroom door open. My guards shall stand outside, and when he is asleep they shall come in and bind him and carry him off into a ship, and he shall be sent to the other side of the world. So the wife felt consoled, but the king's water-bearer, who had been listening all the while, went to the little tailor and disclosed to him the whole plan. I shall put a stop to this, said he. At night he lay down as usual in bed, and when his wife thought he was asleep, she got up, opened the door, and lay down again. The little tailor, who only made believe to be asleep, began to murmur plainly, Now, boy, make me that waistcoat and patch me those breeches, or I will lay my yard measure about your shoulders. I have slain 7 at one blow, killed 2 giants, caught a unicorn, and taken a wild boar, and shall I be afraid of those who are standing outside my room door? And when they heard the tailor say this, a great fear seized them. They fled away as if they had been wild hares, and none of them would venture to attack him. And so the little tailor all his lifetime remained a king. Hello. He is in another room. He's in the other room. He didn't want to hang out today. This piece is so aggressively blonde. It's throwing everything off. He is in another room. Yeah. Okay, next is Cinderella. We all know Cinderella. Well, he wasn't here for a week, and now he's back, and now he's sleeping. Yeah, he doesn't always want to hang out. I mostly make him so that he doesn't bark in the middle of the stream and cause a whole upset. So, yeah. Next is, did he reach Ankh status? Sure. Cinderella. There was once a rich man whose wife lay sick, and when she felt her end drawing near, she called out to her only daughter to come near her bed and said, "Dear child, be pious and good, and God will always take care of you, and I will look down upon you from heaven and will be with you." And then she closed her eyes and expired. The maiden went every day to her mother's grave and wept, and was always pious and good. When the winter came, the snow covered the grave with a white covering, and when the sun came in the early spring and melted it away, the man took himself another wife. The new wife brought 2 daughters home with her, and they were beautiful and fair in appearance, but at heart were black and ugly. And then began very evil times for the poor stepdaughter. "Is the stupid creature to sit in the same room with us?" said they. "Those who eat food must earn it. Out upon her for a kitchen maid." They took away her pretty dresses and put on her an old grey kirtle and gave her wooden shoes to wear. "Just look now at the proud princess, how she is decked out," cried they, laughing, and then they sent her into the kitchen. There she was obliged to do heavy work from morning to night, get up early in the morning, draw water, make the fires, cook, and wash. Besides that, the sisters did their utmost to torment her, mocking her and strewing peas and lentils among the ashes and setting her to pick them up. In the evenings, when she was quite tired out with her hard day's work, she had no bed to lie on, but was obliged to rest on the hearth among the cinders. And as she always looked dusty and dirty, they named her Cinderella. It happened one day that the father went to the fair, and he asked his 2 stepdaughters what he should bring back for them. "Fine clothes," said one. "Pearls and jewels," said the other. "But what will you have, Cinderella?" said he. "The first twig, father, that strikes against your hat on the way home. That is what I should like you to bring me." So he brought for the 2 stepdaughters fine clothes, pearls, and jewels, and on his way back, as he rode through a green lane, a hazel twig struck against his hat, and he broke it off and carried it home with him. And when he reached home, he gave to the stepdaughters what they had asked for, and to Cinderella he gave the hazel twig. She thanked him and went to her mother's grave and planted the twig there, weeping so bitterly that the tears fell upon it and watered it, and it flourished and became a fine tree. Cinderella went to see it 3 times a day and wept and prayed, and each time a white bird rose up upon the tree, and if she uttered any wish, the bird brought her whatever she had wished for. How old is Ace? I think he's 8. I think he's 8 now. Now it came to pass that the king ordained a festival that should last for 3 days, and to which all the beautiful young women of that country were bidden, so that the king's son might choose a bride from among them. When the 2 stepdaughters heard that they too were bidden to appear, they felt very pleased, and they called Cinderella and said, "Comb our hair, brush our shoes, and make our buckles fast. We are going to the wedding feast at the king's castle." Cinderella, when she heard this, could not help crying, for she too would have liked to go to the dance, and she begged her stepmother to allow her. "What, you, Cinderella?" said she. "In all your dust and dirt, you want to go to the festival? You that have no dress and no shoes. You want to dance." But as she persisted in asking, at last the stepmother said, "I have strewed a dish full of lentils in the ashes, and if you can pick them all up again in 2 hours, you may go with us." Then the maiden went out. Then the maiden went to the back door that led out into the garden and called, "O gentle doves, O turtle doves, and all the birds that be, the lentils that in ashes lie, come and pick up for me. The good must be put into the dish, the bad you may eat if you wish." Then there came to the kitchen window 2 white doves, and after them some turtle doves, and at last a crowd of all the birds under heaven, chirping and fluttering, and they alighted among the ashes, and the doves nodded with their heads and began to pick, peck, and then all the others began to pick, peck, and put all the good grains into the dish. Before an hour was over, all was done, and they flew away. Then the maiden brought the dish to her stepmother, feeling joyful, and thinking that she should now go to the feast. But the stepmother said, "No, Cinderella, you have no proper clothes, and you do not know how to dance. You would be laughed at." And then Cinderella cried for disappointment. She added, "If you can pick 2 dishes full of lentils out of the ashes, nice and clean, you shall go with us," thinking to herself, "For that is not possible." When she had strewed 2 dishes full of lentils among the ashes, the maiden went through the back door into the garden and cried, "O gentle doves, O turtle doves, and all the birds that be, the lentils that in ashes lie, come and pick up for me. The good must be put in the dish, the bad you may eat if you wish." So there came to the kitchen window 2 white doves, and then some turtle doves, and at last a crowd of all the other birds under heaven, chirping and fluttering as they alighted among the ashes. And the doves nodded with their heads and began to pick, peck, and then all the others began to pick, peck, and put all the good grains into the dish. And before half an hour was over, it was all done, and they flew away. Then the maiden took the dishes to the stepmother, feeling joyful and thinking that now she should go with them to the feast. But she said, All this is of no good to you. You cannot come with us, for you have no proper clothes and cannot dance. You would put us to shame. What book is this? This is Grimm's Fairy Tales. Right now we are reading Cinderella. Thanks for being here. Thanks for joining. Then she turned her back on poor Cinderella and made haste to set out with her 2 proud daughters. And as there was no one left in the house, Cinderella went to her mother's grave under the hazel bush and cried, little tree, shake over me, that silver and gold may come down and cover me." Then the bird threw down a dress of gold and silver and a pair of slippers embroidered with silk and silver, and in all haste she put on the dress and went to the festival. But her stepmother and sisters did not know her and thought she must be a foreign princess. She looked so beautiful in her golden dress. Of Cinderella they never thought at all, and supposed that she was sitting at home and picking the lentils out of the ashes. The king's son came to meet her and took her by the hand and danced with her, and he refused to stand up with anyone else, so that he might not be obliged to let go of her hand. And when anyone came to claim it, he answered, "She is my partner." And when the evening came, she wanted to go home, but the prince said he would go with her to take care of her, for he wanted to see where the beautiful maiden lived. But she escaped him and jumped up into the pigeon house. Then the prince waited until the father came and told him the strange maiden had jumped into the pigeon house. The father thought to himself, "It cannot surely be Cinderella," and called for axes and hatchets and had the pigeon house cut down, but there was no one in it. And when they entered the house, there sat Cinderella in her dirty clothes among the cinders, and a little oil lamp burnt dimly in the chimney, for Cinderella had been very quick and had jumped out of the pigeon house again and had run to the hazel bush, and there she had taken off her beautiful dress and had lain it on the grave, and the birds had carried it away again. And then she had put on her little grey kirtle again and had sat down in the kitchen among the cinders. It's the Brothers Grimm, the fairy tales. You know them. Pretty much all of the early Disney movies. The next day, when the festival began anew and the parents and stepsisters had gone to it, Cinderella went to the hazel bush and cried, little tree, shake over me, that silver and gold may come down and cover me." Then the bird cast down a still more splendid dress than on the day before, and when she appeared in it among the guests, everyone was astonished at her beauty. The prince had been waiting until she came, and he took her hand and danced with her alone. And when anyone else came to invite her, he said, "She is my partner." And when the evening came, she wanted to go home, and the prince followed her, for he wanted to see to what house she belonged. But she broke away from him and ran into the garden at the back of the house. There stood a fine large tree, bearing splendid pears. She leapt as lightly as a squirrel among the branches, and the prince did not know what had become of her. So he waited until the father came, and then he told him that the strange maiden had rushed from him, and that he thought she had gone up into the pear tree. The father thought to himself, "It cannot surely be Cinderella," and called for an axe and felled the tree, but there was no one in it. And when they went into the kitchen, there sat Cinderella among the cinders, as usual, for she had got down the other side of the tree and had taken back her beautiful clothes to the bird on the hazel bush, and had put on her old grey kirtle again. On the third day, when the parents and the stepchildren had set off, Cinderella went again to her mother's grave and said to the tree, little tree, shake over me, that silver and gold may come down and cover me." Then the bird cast down a dress, the like of which had never been seen for splendor and brilliancy, and slippers that were of gold. And when she appeared in this dress at the feast, nobody knew what to say for wonderment. The prince danced with her alone, and if anyone else asked her, the prince danced with her alone, and if anyone else asked her, he answered, "She is my partner." And when it was evening, Cinderella wanted to go home, and the prince was about to go with her, when she ran past him so quickly that he could not follow her. But he had laid a plan, and had caused all the steps to be spread with pitch, so that as she rushed down them, the left shoe of the maiden remained sticking in it. The prince picked it up and saw that it was of gold, and very small and slender. The next morning he went to the father and told him that none should be his bride save the one whose foot the golden shoe should fit. Then the 2 sisters were very glad, because they had pretty feet. The eldest went to her room to try on the shoe, and her mother stood by. But she could not get her great toe into it, for the shoe was too small. Then her mother handed her a knife and said, "Cut the toe off, for when you are queen, you will never have to go on foot." So the girl cut her toe off, squeezed her foot into the shoe, concealed the pain, and went down to the prince. Then he took her with him on his horse as his bride and rode off. They had to pass by the grave, and there sat the 2 pigeons on the hazel bush, and cried, there they go, there is blood on her shoe. The shoe is too small, not the right bride at all." Then the prince looked at her shoe and saw the blood flowing. As he turned his horse round and took the false bride home again, saying she was not the right one, and that the other sister must try on the shoe. So she went into her room to do so, and got her toes comfortably in, but her heel was too large. Then her mother handed her the knife, saying, "Cut off a piece of your heel. When you are queen, you will never have to go on foot." So the girl cut off a piece of her heel and thrust her foot into the shoe, concealed the pain, and went down to the prince, who took his bride before him on his horse and rode off. When they passed by the hazel bush, the two pigeons sat there and cried, "There they go, there they go. There is blood on her shoe. The shoe is too small, not the right bride at all." Then the prince looked at her foot and saw how the blood was flowing from the shoe and staining the white stocking. And he turned his horse round and brought the false bride home again. "That is not the right one," said he. "Have you no other daughter?" "No," said the man. "Only my dead wife left behind her a little stunted Cinderella. It is impossible that she can be the bride." But the king's son ordered her to be sent for, but the mother said, "Oh, no, she is much too dirty. I could not let her be seen." But he would have her fetched, and so Cinderella had to appear. First she washed her face and hands quite clean and went in and curtsied to the prince, who held out to her the golden shoe. Then she sat down on a stool, drew her foot out of the heavy wooden shoe, and slipped it into the golden one, which it fitted perfectly. And when she stood up and the prince looked in her face, he knew again this beautiful maiden that had danced with him, and he cried, "This is the right bride." The stepmother and the two sisters were thunderstruck and grew pale with anger, but he put Cinderella before him on his horse and rode off. And as they passed the hazel bush, the two white pigeons cried, "There they go, there they go. No blood on her shoe. The shoe's not too small. The right bride is she after all." And when they had thus cried, they came flying after and perched on Cinderella's shoulders, one on the right, the other on the left, and so remained. And when her wedding with the prince was appointed to be held, the false sisters came, hoping to curry favor and to take part in the festivities. So as the bridal procession went to the church, the eldest walked on the right side and the younger on the left, and the pigeons picked out an eye of each of them. And as they returned, the elder was on the left side and the younger on the right, and the pigeons picked out the other eye of each of them. And so they were condemned to go blind for the rest of their days because of their wickedness and falsehoods. Yeah. Next is... This is a short one. The Mouse, the Bird, and the Sausage. Once upon a time, a mouse and a bird and a sausage lived and kept house together in perfect peace among themselves and in great prosperity. It was the bird's business to fly to the forest every day and bring back wood. The mouse had to draw the water, make the fire, and set the table, and the sausage had to do the cooking. Nobody is content in this world. Much will have more. One day the bird met with another bird on the way and told him of his excellent condition in life. But the other bird called him a poor simpleton to do so much work while the others led such easy lives at home. When the mouse had made up her fire and drawn water, she was to rest in her little room until it was time to lay the cloth. The sausage stayed by the saucepans, looked to it that the victuals were well cooked, and just before dinner time he stirred the broth or the stew 3 or 4 times well round himself, so as to enrich and season and flavor it. Then the bird used to come home and lay down his load, and as they sat to table, and after a good meal they would go to bed and sleep their fill till the next morning. It was really a most satisfactory life. But the bird came to the resolution next day never again to fetch wood. He had, he said, been their slave long enough. Now they must change about and make a new arrangement. So in spite of all the mouse and the sausage could say, the bird was determined to have his own way. So they drew lots to settle it, and it fell so that the sausage was to fetch wood, the mouse was to cook, and the bird was to draw water. Now see what happened. The sausage went away after wood, the bird made up fire, and the mouse put on the pot, and they waited until the sausage should come home, bringing the wood for the next day. But the sausage was absent so long that they thought something must have happened to him, and the bird went part of the way to see if he could see anything of him. Not far off he met with a dog on the road, who, looking upon the sausage's awful prey, had picked him up and made an end of him. The bird then lodged a complaint against the dog as an open and flagrant robber, and it was all of no good, as the dog declared that he had found forged letters upon the sausage, so that he deserved to lose his life. The bird then very sadly took up the wood and carried it home himself, and related to the mouse all that he had seen and heard. They were both very troubled, but determined to look on the bright side of things, and still to remain together. And so the bird lay the cloth, and the mouse prepared the food, and finally got into the pot, as the sausage used to do, to stir and flavor the broth, and when she had to part with fur and skin, and lastly life. And when the bird came to dish up supper, there was no cook to be seen, and he turned over the heap of wood and looked, but the cook never appeared again. By accident the wood caught fire, and the bird hastened to fetch water to put it out, but he let fall the bucket in the well, and himself after it, so that he could not get out again, and he was obliged to drown. Oh my. Also, this is where we're going to stop today, but there is an illustration of the dog and the sausage. And look at the little sausage. Isn't he ridiculous? Yeah, that's all. Okay. Thank you so much for taking the time to read with me. I will upload this one on YouTube. That's pretty much it. I'm not sure if it will be a lunchtime or an after work stream tomorrow, but there will be one. So That's all for now. Thanks so much for reading with me. Bye. Gotta end this. Bye.